Big changes just hit Trump's latest signature bill, and depending on who you are, those changes could affect your finances, your health coverage, or even your retirement plans more than you would expect. On Monday, the Senate scrambled through a marathon of last-minute amendments, surprise tax changes, and spending adjustments that weren't part of the original version passed just last week. Now, there's a full court press to get it finalized and signed by President Trump before the July 4th deadline. In this breakdown, we'll go over the major revisions, what's still up for debate, and why this updated bill is triggering serious concerns, from Capitol Hill to everyday American households. If you're relying on Medicaid, approaching retirement, or just trying to figure out how this legislation could affect you, it's time to pay attention. Let's unpack what's happening. The Senate kicked off what's known as a vote-a-rama, a back-to-back amendment sprint where senators can introduce as many changes as they want, with no set stopping point and no breaks. It all began Monday morning, and as night fell, senators were still at it, voting, debating, and negotiating behind closed doors. That alone tells you something. This bill is nowhere near finished. And Monday's session made one thing clear: there are deep divisions around healthcare, taxes, energy, and the broader vision this legislation represents. Now, we know the fine print can be overwhelming. So let's walk through it piece by piece. First up, Medicaid. If you or someone in your household depends on Medicaid, this section is critical. The Senate version could result in nearly 12 million more people without health insurance by 2020, according to official projections. That's a massive shift. In total, this version slashes nearly $930 billion in Medicaid funding over the next decade. But it's not just the dollars. The bill adds new eligibility rules that would require more people to be working in order to keep their coverage, including parents of teens. Here's the twist. The House version had an exemption for parents with kids under 18. The Senate took that out. That means if you're a single parent with, say, a 15-year-old, juggling multiple jobs or unpredictable shifts, your healthcare could now be at risk unless you meet a strict work-hour threshold. This might seem like a technicality, but for low-income families, it's the difference between staying covered or being left out. On top of that, states would now face tighter restrictions on how much local funding they can raise for Medicaid, thanks to new federal limits. That might sound like a budgetary footnote, but in rural areas, where hospitals already operate on razor-thin margins, it could lead to service cuts, layoffs, or even full closures. And that leads us to Planned Parenthood. Late Monday, the Senate opted to keep a ban in the bill that blocks Medicaid funding from going to Planned Parenthood. But instead of a 10-year freeze, it's limited to just 1 year. Sounds like a compromise? Maybe. But even a 1-year ban could still force hundreds of clinics to shut down, particularly in regions where there are already few options for care. It's important to remember, Planned Parenthood isn't just about abortion services. These clinics provide cancer screenings, birth control, and general women's health services, especially for underserved populations. So even short-term restrictions could leave long-lasting damage. You might be asking, why the rush? Why cram this much into a single bill with this many moving parts and try to push it through in just a few days? The answer? Politics. President Trump has made it very clear. He wants this bill signed and sitting on his desk by Independence Day. July 4th isn't just symbolic, it's a deadline. And that's why the process is moving at lightning speed, even if the consequences aren't fully clear. Let's talk spending. This version of the bill is projected to add $33 trillion to the national deficit over the next 10 years. That's nearly $1 trillion more than the House version. And the reason? Taxes. The Senate retained several big corporate tax breaks, made some of them permanent, and scaled back planned cuts to safety net programs like food assistance. There's a new phrase making the rounds in Washington: expand the giveaways, shrink the takeaways. That's how some analysts are summing up the Senate version: generous upfront perks, but fewer long-term ways to pay for them. Supporters argue this approach will stimulate growth, create jobs, and give the economy a much-needed kick. But critics warn it shifts the burden onto everyday people through reduced public services, rising utility bills, or future tax increases. Enter Elon Musk. On Monday, Musk took to social media to blast the bill. He called out lawmakers who previously pledged to rein in spending and now support what he sees as reckless budgeting. His words: hang your head in shame. He even threatened to start a new political movement, the America Party, if the bill becomes law. And he's not alone. Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina made headlines with one of the strongest speeches yet. He accused the bill of betraying Trump's promise to protect Medicaid and warned that over 600,000 people in his state could lose coverage. He then made a bold move, announcing that he will not seek re-election. That's not grandstanding for votes. That's walking away on principle. Behind the scenes, tensions were just as high. Democrats accused Republicans of making late-stage changes in secret. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said portions of the bill were being modified in back rooms, with deals being made out of public view. Even some moderate Republicans showed signs of unease. Senators Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins sided with Democrats on several key amendments, especially those that would protect Medicaid funding and support struggling rural hospitals. When members of the same party start breaking ranks, it usually means deep concerns are bubbling beneath the surface. Then there's energy, an under-the-radar change with big implications. Over the weekend, Senate Republicans added a new tax on solar and wind energy industries, right in the middle of a national energy transition. Experts say this could majorly disrupt clean energy development, especially as the U.S. braces for massive increases in electricity demand due to AI, cloud data centers, and tech infrastructure expansion. But here's what's raising eyebrows. One projection found that energy bills in red states, including Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Texas, could rise as much as 18% by 2035 if the bill passes in its current form. If you're on a fixed income or already scraping by every month, that's a big hit. And now, a technical change with big consequences: cost calculations. On Monday, the Senate started using a different formula to measure the bill's financial impact, called the current policy baseline. What does that mean? Basically, they're pretending certain tax cuts will last forever, even though they legally expire. The result? The bill appears less expensive than it really is. Critics say this is a dangerous precedent because it makes it easier to hide the true long-term costs of future legislation. So, where are we now? As of Monday night, no final vote had been held. Senators were still working late into the evening, sorting through more amendments, with more expected on Tuesday. If the bill passes the Senate, it will head to the House, where leadership is already preparing for backlash. Moderates are skeptical. Conservatives say it doesn't go far enough. Still, the goal remains: get the bill to Trump's desk by Wednesday. What should you keep an eye on? Track any changes to the Medicaid provisions. Watch what gets quietly added or removed before the final vote. And listen closely to how lawmakers talk about the bill in public compared to what they're saying behind closed doors. There's a lot happening in the shadows right now. So let us know, what part of this hits closest to home for you? Is it the healthcare cuts, the rising energy bills, the corporate tax breaks, or just the breakneck pace of the whole process? Drop a comment. I read everything you send, and it helps guide what we cover next. If you've got a family member, friend, or neighbor trying to stay informed but feeling overwhelmed, send them this update. We're watching this closely, and as soon as a final vote happens, we'll bring you the full report. Until then, stay informed, stay grounded, and let's keep walking through this together.